A comparison video that I thought would be good to throw out there on the YouTubes is a comparison of what I think is Asics' most popular lifestyle range, the Quantum shoe. And in front of me, I've got three models that make up that range. There is the Asics Quantum 90, the Asics Quantum 180, and the Asics Quantum 360. I'm about to break those differences down. Let's get into it. I don't know what it's like in whatever part of the world it is that you're watching this video, but about 20 years ago, or whenever it was that Kill Bill was released, the Onitsuka Tiger Mexico 66 was all the rage here down under. It is still a pretty solid option that is kind of popular, but it is nowhere near as hot as what it was all those years ago. Onitsuka Tiger actually made many different models outside of the Mexico 66, but it is pretty common for people to refer to that Mexico 66 style as the Onitsuka Tiger shoe. That's not actually the case. The brand actually makes a lot of different silhouettes, just nowhere near as popular as what that Mexico 66 shoe is. The brand that we know today as Asics started their life called Onitsuka Tiger, and in 1977 changed its name to the Asics Corporation, and we've known the brand as Asics ever since. Back to the Quantum shoe. As far as the pricing structure for these three shoes go, we've got the Asics Quantum 90 that retails at $140 here in Australia, or $85 US in the States. The Asics Quantum 180 that retails at $200 Australian dollars here in Australia, or $120 US in the States. And then there is the Asics Quantum 360 that retails at $240 here in Australia, or $200 US in the States. I think this Quantum range has been a real hit for Asics in a segment that they don't generally perform all that well in. When you think of Asics, you think of performance running shoes. They make netball shoes and cricket shoes and other shoes like that, but they're at their core a running shoe brand, and you generally don't think of them to make really popular lifestyle options. Well, that was until this shoe was released, and I think their success is mainly due to the fact that they belong to the sports style segment. And if you're not familiar with what a sports style shoe is, it's a shoe that's design is based on a performance shoe, but its intended use is not performance. So in the case of the Asics Quantum range, they are clearly inspired by a running shoe, and running is part of the Asics DNA, but they've been given a little bit of an extra oomph to give them the chops that they need to be able to be worn as a casual option. Sure, you could go out and buy a performance running shoe and use that casually, and for most people that will work fine. But what you need to remember about performance running shoes and any other performance shoe is that they are developed with that particular sport in mind. Their primo priority is to perform in that sport, and style is usually second. And in the case of Asics, at least up until the last couple of years, and with some of their more recent colorways and models that they've released, I wouldn't be surprised if style was like their 10th or 11th priority. So what are these guys all about? Well, they are a lifestyle option, and they're all based on what is essentially the identical silhouette. They all have a mesh upper, although that mesh is different from shoe to shoe. They all have gel as part of their midsole. It's just some of these shoes have more gel than others. And the fit is also consistent right across the board. Whether you're going for the 90, 180 or 360, they all fit true to size. One thing I do want to point out is that the Quantum 90 that I've got in this video is an older version of the 90. There is a newer version that has a much more similar style to the Asics 180 that I've got here. But apart from that updated look to the upper, all other elements of the 90 have remained the same. It uses the same mesh, has the same feeling underfoot, and so I think it's pretty appropriate for me to still comment on how the 90 compares against the 180 and 360. If you disagree, feel free to sound off in the comments below. And speaking of uppers, that is the first area that all of the models differ from each other. The 90 has a regular mesh upper, while the 180 and the 360 both use an engineered mesh upper. The mesh in the 90 feels fine, but it doesn't feel as nice as the engineered mesh on the 180 and the 360. The engineered mesh on the 180 and 360 are also more breathable. And so if you were planning on wearing any of these shoes for long periods of time, I would expect the 180 and 360 to outperform the 90. The upper on the 180 and 360 are not identical though. While they share that same engineered mesh, they do have different treatments as far as the leather paneling and overlays go, which creates a different feeling on foot. The 180 has a lot of synthetic leather overlays around the shoe, but then on top of that, there are all of these overlays that kind of create a more stable feel to the shoe overall. The 360 has less leather paneling. You can see that in the toe box area where the 180 extends almost the whole way around the toe box. The 360 has a lot less of that leather. And then along the sides of the shoe, there is less of these reinforcements that create that more forgiving, flexible feel. It also creates a different look to the silhouette, I think. The 180 looks a little bit more bulky compared to the 360. And so from a styling perspective at least, I kind of like the way the 360 looks. Outside of the difference in materials across all three of the models, one of the other points I think worth making is that the 180 and 360 do get nicer treatments as far as the colorways go. The 90 seems to get a little bit more of the plain type of lazy-ish colorways, while the 180 and 360 tend to get some of those more adventurous colorways applied to them. Believe it or not, the outsoles in each of the shoes are actually different. The 90 has a standard rubber outsole that doesn't actually cover a great deal of the shoe. There is some rubber along the contact points in the forefoot, as well as some rubber around the contact points in the heel. The 180 and 360 have more rubber coverage, and the rubber that they're using as part of these outsoles is Asics' AHA rubber. That AHA rubber is meant to be more durable, it's meant to be more grippy, and it's also meant to provide a bit more of a cushion feel. Practically on foot, I don't really notice a difference between each of these outsoles, but one of the benefits with going something like a 180 or a 360 is that there is more rubber to wear through, and so I would expect durability to be better on a 360 or a 180 than it would be on a 90. Now into the midsoles, and this is where I think the biggest difference between these shoes is, because it's what has the greatest visual impact. The 90, 180 and 360 all have different degrees of gel as part of their midsole, but one thing they all share in common is that outside of that gel, they've got an EVA base as part of the midsole. I think talking about how this looks from an aesthetic perspective, in my opinion, the 180 and the 360 are the clear winners here. One thing to point out with the 90 and the 180 is that while it seems to have a lot of gel along the outside of the shoe or the lateral side of the shoe, when you go to the medial side of each of these shoes, there isn't much gel. And I think that's fine, because you generally don't see that part of the shoe when someone's wearing them. It is still worth pointing out that that is different when you're comparing it to the 360. That really does have a lot more gel coverage right around the shoe. As far as how they feel on foot though, while the 360 has a lot more gel than the 180 or the 90, it is only a little bit more comfortable. I personally don't find the 360 to be that much more comfortable than what the 90 is, but that's just me. That doesn't make the 180 or the 360 overpriced. If anything, it's probably a stronger case for why you really don't need to consider the 90. You see, in these shoes, the exposed gel is the biggest selling point of getting them. It's a lifestyle shoe, so while it does need to be comfortable, it needs to look good. And visually, I think the 180 and the 360 have a better impact. The gel in the 90 just seems lacking, and it really looks incomplete to me anyway. So if you're not getting a triple white or triple black version of the Quantum shoe, it kind of makes me think, what's the point of the 90? Overall, I think the 180 or the 360 is the most compelling option if you are considering a Quantum shoe. If I had to pick one though, I would be going with the Quantum 360. I find that streamlined look up top to not only look better, but to feel better on foot. And the gel, while it only has a small comfort advantage over the other two, visually just looks so much better. What is going to win out though, in your choice of which Quantum you do end up with, is probably colorways. What I've noticed with the way that Asics have structured this Quantum line is that the colorways do differ between the 90, the 180 and the 360. So what is actually going to win out is probably your colorway choice. I'm interested in what you guys think. How many of you guys have considered, got, liked or not liked the Quantum range? Let me know what you think in the comments below. But until the next video, laters.